History is full of strange and unsettling events, each with its own unique story and mystery. Few, however, are as baffling and inexplicable as the dancing plague of 1518, a phenomenon that has puzzled historians for centuries. Imagine a city gripped by a sudden and uncontrollable urge to dance, where the streets are filled with people moving in a frenzied, almost hypnotic state. Picture people dancing for days, weeks, even months on end, unable to stop despite their exhaustion and the physical toll it took on their bodies. This was the reality in Strasbourg, a city in what is now France, during the sweltering summer of 1518, a time when the heat was oppressive and the air thick with tension. The dancing plague, as it came to be known, is a stark reminder of the mysteries that still linger in our understanding of the human mind and body, and the strange ways in which they can manifest. The events in Strasbourg were not an isolated incident, but rather part of a series of similar outbreaks that have occurred throughout history. These outbreaks, often occurring during times of great stress and upheaval, have left historians and scientists alike searching for answers, trying to understand the underlying causes. These outbreaks have been meticulously documented, with historians and scientists poring over records, trying to piece together the puzzle of what could have driven so many people to dance uncontrollably. What could have caused hundreds of people to abandon their daily lives and dance with such abandon, often to the point of exhaustion and even death? Theories abound, but definitive answers remain elusive. The dancing plague of 1518 stands out for its scale and duration, making it one of the most significant and perplexing events of its kind. It is the best documented instance of this strange phenomenon, providing us with a chilling glimpse into the lives of those caught in its grip and the desperate attempts to understand and control it. Through eyewitness accounts, physicians' notes, and official records, we can piece together a narrative of this bizarre and tragic event, gaining insight into the human condition and the mysteries of the mind. In the sections that follow, we will delve into the heart of the dancing plague, exploring its origins, its impact on the people of Strasbourg, and the enduring mysteries that continue to fascinate and confound us centuries later. Join us as we journey back to 1518, to the streets of Strasbourg, and attempt to unravel the enigma of the dancing plague, a story that remains as compelling today as it was over 500 years ago. To understand the dancing plague, we must first understand the world in which it occurred, a world teetering on the edge of chaos and transformation. Strasbourg in 1518 was a bustling city on the banks of the Rhine River, a vital artery for trade and communication. Part of the Holy Roman Empire, it was a major center of trade and commerce, attracting merchants and travelers from far and wide. Beneath the surface of this economic prosperity, however, lay a current of unrest and uncertainty, a simmering tension that affected every aspect of life. Europe in the 16th century was a continent in flux, a place where old certainties were being questioned and new ideas were taking root. The Protestant Reformation was beginning to challenge the authority of the Catholic Church, and social and political tensions were running high, creating an atmosphere of instability. Strasbourg, situated at a crossroads of cultures and beliefs, was directly in the path of these sweeping changes, making it a focal point for conflict and innovation. The years preceding the dancing plague had been particularly difficult for the citizens of Strasbourg, who faced numerous hardships. A series of harsh winters had led to crop failures and widespread famine, leaving the land barren and the people desperate. The price of food had skyrocketed, and many people were struggling to survive, often resorting to desperate measures to feed their families. Disease was rampant, adding to the misery and fear that permeated daily life as epidemics swept through the population with little warning. In times of hardship, people often turned to faith for solace and explanation, seeking comfort in the familiar rituals of their religion. Strasbourg was a deeply religious city, and its inhabitants were accustomed to interpreting misfortune as a sign of God's displeasure, a divine punishment for their sins. This backdrop of religious fervor, economic hardship, and social anxiety created a fertile ground for the emergence of something extraordinary, something as inexplicable and terrifying as the dancing plague, a phenomenon that would leave an indelible mark on the history of Strasbourg. The dancing plague began, as many historical events do, with a single, seemingly insignificant event. It was an event that would soon spiral out of control, capturing the attention and fear of an entire city. In mid-July 1518, a woman named Frau Trophea stepped into the street and began to dance. Her movements were spontaneous, almost as if she were responding to some unheard melody. There was no music, no apparent reason for her sudden outburst of energy. She danced alone, her feet moving in a rhythm that only she could hear, yet she danced on, her movements becoming increasingly erratic and uncontrolled. Her body seemed to move with a mind of its own, defying all attempts to stop. At first, Frau Troffea's behavior was met with amusement and curiosity. People gathered around her, intrigued by the bizarre spectacle unfolding before their eyes. Passers-by stopped to watch, some even tossed coins her way, taking her strange dance as a form of street entertainment. It was a welcome distraction from their daily routines. However, as the hours turned into days and Frau Troffea showed no signs of stopping, amusement gave way to concern and then alarm. The crowd's laughter faded, replaced by whispers of worry. Frau Troffea's relentless dancing seemed to defy all sense and reason. She danced without rest, her body driven by an inexplicable force. She danced through the night, her body racked with exhaustion, her feet bleeding. The pain was evident, yet she could not stop. Still, she continued, her face contorted in a grimace that was both pained and strangely ecstatic. It was a sight that both fascinated and horrified those who watched. It was as if some unseen force had taken possession of her, compelling her to dance. The townspeople began to whisper of curses and dark magic. What began as the strange behavior of one woman quickly spread like wildfire. The dancing plague was no longer an isolated incident. Within days, others in Strasbourg began to experience the same uncontrollable urge to dance. It was as if the madness was contagious, spreading from person to person. At first it was just a handful of individuals, but soon dozens, then hundreds were caught in the grip of the dancing mania. The city was in chaos. The streets of Strasbourg, once filled with the sounds of commerce and conversation, now echoed with the relentless rhythm of shuffling feet. The city had become a stage for a macabre dance that no one could escape. As the plague of dancing spread, it began to take on a life of its own. What had started as a bizarre spectacle transformed into a terrifying epidemic, gripping the city of Strasbourg in a collective frenzy. The dancers, their numbers swelling with each passing day, were a chaotic and disturbing sight. They danced in the streets, in the marketplaces, even in the cathedral, their bodies moving with a frantic, almost possessed energy. Some danced in groups, their movements strangely synchronized, while others whirled and leaped in solitary abandon. Their faces, contorted with a mixture of pain and ecstasy, reflected the internal struggle that seemed to consume them. The dancing was relentless, continuing day and night. Sleep offered no escape, as many reported terrifying nightmares that compelled them to continue their frantic movements even in slumber. As days turned into weeks, exhaustion took its toll. Bodies, pushed beyond their limits, began to collapse. Still, many continued to dance, driven by a force they could neither understand nor control. The plague of dancing was more than just a bizarre medical mystery, it was a social crisis of unprecedented proportions. The normal rhythms of life in Strasbourg were completely upended. Shops closed, business ground to a halt, and the city streets, once bustling with activity, became places of fear and uncertainty. Faced with a crisis that defied all logic and understanding, the city authorities struggled to respond to the escalating chaos. At a loss for a rational explanation, they initially turned to the familiar comfort of religion. Many believed that the dancing plague was a curse, a divine punishment for the sins of the city. Religious processions were organized and priests were called upon to exorcise the demons believed to be possessing the dancers. Shrines were erected and relics of saints were paraded through the streets, all in a desperate attempt to appease the wrath of God and end the terrifying affliction that had gripped their city. However, as the dancing continued unabated, a different approach was needed. Physicians were summoned, their expertise sought to understand and treat this baffling ailment. Bloodletting, a common medical practice at the time, was employed, as were various herbal remedies and purgatives. Yet, nothing seemed to stem the tide of the dancing plague. Some physicians, desperate for a solution, proposed that the dancers simply needed to be allowed to indulge their bizarre compulsion. They argued that the body, in its strange wisdom, was attempting to purge itself of some harmful humor or imbalance. Acting on this theory, the authorities set aside a stage and even hired musicians to encourage the dancers. The decision to encourage the dancing proved to be a grave miscalculation. Far from providing a cure, it only seemed to exacerbate the situation. The relentless dancing, fueled by exhaustion and dehydration, took a devastating toll on the bodies of those afflicted. Muscles cramped and seized, bones fractured, and hearts gave out under the immense strain. What had begun as a bizarre spectacle descended into a macabre dance with death. As the days turned into weeks, the stench of death permeated the air, a grim reminder of the plague's deadly consequences. The exact number of those who perished during the Strasbourg dancing plague remains a subject of debate among historians. Some estimates place the death toll in the dozens, while others suggest that hundreds may have succumbed to the relentless demands of the dancing mania. The plague eventually ran its course, though precisely why remains a mystery. By September of 1518, just a few short months after it began, the dancing began to subside. The exhausted dancers, their bodies and minds broken, slowly returned to some semblance of normalcy. The city of Strasbourg, forever marked by the events of that summer, began the long and arduous process of healing and recovery.